Welcome everybody to the Next Reel Film Board. We've got the now what has become the usual suspects. I feel like every time I say that, I sort of cross myself that I wish our other two compatriots would come back. One of them, I think, is still hiding in Florida, right? Is he finally back from his epic trip?
I don't know. I think today was the hope to be traveling day.
Goodness. I think he spent like the last 2 months at Disney World.
You know, if you're stuck there because of plane malfunctions, I guess it's not the worst place to be trapped.
This is Uber Mike Evans, who we haven't heard from in forever. We hope to see him back soon. And Chad Stoops, we hope to see back soon. He's been on a bit of a hiatus too. So it's the usual thugs that we have. I'm Pete Wright. That was Andy Nelson just a second ago. And we also have Steve Sarmento. Say hi,
yes,
Steve.
we do. Good evening, everyone.
And we also have I don't even know. There's like so many new ways to introduce, but Tommy Handsome, Tom Metz, Thomas W. Metz III.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for having me.
We are talking about, this is sort of I don't know, what do you call it? It's not a reunion episode. It's what is it called? It's part of a series that we've decided to do.
It's a continuation of our Hobbit trilogy.
All right, it's the Hobbit. We're doing the Hobbit trilogy. We weren't even thinking about it, and some of us, Tom, were downright hostile at having to go see this film, but we're doing it anyway because there was so much about the first film, I think, that merited follow-up, both on the technical side of the film and on the dramatic side, the narrative side of the film, looking at what Peter Jackson has done. By splitting up this tiny waif of a book into 3 epic 3-hour films. And so that is where we begin. Let us go around and give our initial impressions, please, of The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug. And I would like to invite Tom to start.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just like the real quick sum up, I thought it was much better than the first one. I had a much better time. I still feel it was incredibly bloated and potentially 45 minutes too long. But granted, that comes from me. Whenever they were talking about prophecies or necromancers, I had no idea what they were talking about. And there was a lot of that in this. The only other thing I would say is if I grew up in Middle-earth, I would open a company or a factory that produces guardrails, because there were 90 scenes of people walking over incredibly high up, very narrow rockways, and it kind of gave me a little bit of a panic attack every single time.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
Right? Middle-earth guardrails. Oh.
There's got to be I'm sure there's some place, maybe in the Appalachians, that is similar enough to Middle-earth that you could get away with a company.
I'll work on it. So that's mine.
I'd like to see that business plan next time. Steve?
Yeah, it was more Hobbit.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Wait a minute.
I can get more in depth. After I finished this, I said, okay, I have to completely reframe what Peter Jackson is really doing here, and it's a much longer explanation that I can get into later. But it was more Hobbit, and there were sequences that I enjoyed, but I'm still, thinking through. I saw it late last night, and there's just a lot of things that I think structurally that are going on, and some other things that he's doing in the world of The Hobbit and what he's done by expanding it that is something very different. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I love it. I'm not sure that I hate it. It's something new and different that I think he's trying here.
Wow. I have to admit, I am surprised by that response. I thought you were going to be the completely bullish, like, the one.
The one saying what? Like
the lover of all things, Desolation of Smaug.
No, well, I can tell you I loved the high frame rate still.
I can't wait to talk about that. Okay, Andy, do tell.
Well, I actually completely loved it from beginning to end. I had such a great time watching it, and to be honest, I didn't feel this one was bloated at all. I mean, I had such a hard time in the first one. Mainly it was because I saw it in the high frame rate. And I kind of had a hard time getting past that. This time I just saw it in simple old 24 frames, 2D, and I had so much fun watching it. And honestly, it when it ended, I was floored that I had just gone through 3 hours. I was waiting for another at least half hour, 45 minutes. I had no idea where the time went.
Really?
It just zipped by so fast for me, and I was in it from beginning to end. I loved it.
That's more like it. That's what I expected from Steve, not at all what I expected from Andy. I feel like I need to close my head in a car door.
The man who loves Yee Yee. Here we are.
Yeah, this is a challenge for me because I when Tom said there's a 45 minutes too long, this movie was bloated. I harken back to my experience with Yee Yee and
Are we just making up noises? What does it mean?
Clearly, Tom has not seen Yee Yee. Yee Yee, and a 1 and a 2.
Stop saying that like it means something. What's Yee Yee?
It's a Chinese film by Edward Yang, and we reviewed it this week on the show, which is why likely you haven't heard of it yet. But I'm sure you will, because I know it's going to be the next thing that comes up in your podcast app.
It's the top of my Twitter. I don't know how the computer works. All right.
I am surprising myself that I thought this was an improvement in almost every way over the first film. I saw it not in high frame rate this time, but I am going back to see it in high frame rate this week. I saw it in 3D, real 3D, with my daughter, and I am with Andy. It just zipped by. I found myself really in it every sequence. There were some sequences I didn't think were long enough. I felt like I wanted even more, and I'm really surprised by that, especially coming off of my experience with the first film, which I thought was much more difficult to watch. There were some elements that I think I went in really worried about. And I think that I was really pleased by those elements, specifically the dragon. I mean, I think that's that's the moneymaker, obviously, of this film, and I loved the dragon. I thought that climactic chase through the mines was just absolutely great. We were on the edge of our seats during that sequence, and aside from the fact that I find ultimately this film is a betrayal of the title, at no point does Smaug actually become desolated, and they ended it in a horrible, mean cliffhanger.
Well, it's not about his desolation.
It's the desolation he caused.
It's the fact that Dale is gone. Like, even if you look at what is it? Not Thorin's map, but what the
that turns it around for me. I thought we were
the Desolation of Smaug. That's what they name on the map. That whole area that Smaug has destroyed.
I didn't even catch that, and I've actually read the book a number of times, and that was on the map, isn't it?
They do say the name of the movie in the thing. He goes, "Behold," more or less, "Behold the desolation of Smaug."
See, I'm getting out my map. You know what? There it is. It's right there on the book. I feel like I'm the tool now. Look at that. How quickly tables turn. Desolation of Smaug.
You've been Smaugged.
Here with Smaug down. East awesome. Lie the hills. Okay, so I take that last part back. Although I still find the ending was just horrible. I wanted this movie to go on, and I know,
totally right.
I was really mad about it. Both. I went with Sophie, and we both of us just stood there with our jaws kind of dropped. Like we wanted to see the black arrow hit the chest. That's what we were. That was the money shot for us. We wanted that there, and we didn't get it. And so I hate that we have to wait yet again.
So it sounds like I'm the Grinch then.
Well, you and Steve are the Grinches.
Co-Grinches!
Yeah.
The Grinch twins.
Oh my gosh, we should get t-shirts. Twinsies. All right.
Let's first talk just a little bit about the narrative, shall we? I'm interested in your thoughts. For those who have Tom, have you read the book? You're not a book. You don't do the book. All right. So
I'm a very much a book person, but not a fantasy book.
You clearly don't know how to read. So
it's the Bible and nothing else.
I'm interested in thoughts on how, because this one in some respects differs a lot more, I think, than the first one did, as Peter Jackson and team go to expand The Hobbit. I'm curious your thoughts on how these new pieces fit together. Steve, I think you're probably chomping at the bit to talk about this.
Well, yeah, and that's as I said, that what this film is, it's not so much an adaptation of this novel anymore. It's been expanded, and what Peter Jackson's really, I think, doing is he's completing his, for lack of a better term, his Tolkien cinematic universe. This is his chance to wrap everything up, to have created this entire world. He'll have the sequence of 6 films that just encompasses everything. And as I was watching this, looking at all these extra pieces that they sort of fit in there, I thought, okay, well, that's why we're seeing these pieces. It's other writings that occurred, or other characters that he's brought in, so that it fleshes out everything. So it is really that prequel to Lord of the Rings, by bringing other characters in that aren't in the book, but we know were alive in the world at the time. And I think that's what he's doing here. And in doing that, I don't see this anymore as really being standalone films per se. To me, as I finished this, I thought, what these films really feel like is, it's like binge watching, like Game of Thrones, or something like that, where you've got, let's say, Desolation of Smaug, this 3-hour film, is really like watching 4 episodes of something on HBO. Binge watch them, because you'll have one episode like the barrel sequence, which is like, wow, this, there's the escape and there's this action. Then you'll get followed up with an episode that's a lot of talking and character development, and it's setting things up for the next thing that's happening. And that's what this film really felt like to me, is just separate sequences. It became very episodic, and not so much one single story arc in a film, but this larger story and world, and everything needing to get all the pieces put in place at the right time, so that we have all that information later on at this point and that point. And that's why I almost think of this not so much as a movie, but just big budget, cable TV, miniseries almost. Is that's what it feels like to me, is what's going on here, because there's just so much story he's trying to pack in there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I really like the way you phrase that. It feels right to me, the way I'm sort of approaching this now too. And it's new. I was not. I think maybe it took the last film for me to kind of get past the fact that this wasn't the book that I cherished. That this is a different property. Yeah. He's not bringing that to life. He really is creating his own Middle Earth universe, and that's this was the first time I felt okay about that.
Well, do you feel like he's creating his own universe, or just? I mean, like you said, these characters were alive, and he said, like, we talked about this last year when we talked about the first one, how he went to all the other writings that Tolkien did and found these other stories that were kind of going along, like the whole, what is it, Azog, the Defiler, or whatever his name is, the White Orc. He, I guess, was in there, and it sounds like all of these characters, except for Toriel, have all been somehow in all of the writings, and he's just finding a way to bring it all together to put these pieces in place that, yes, if we sat down and read everything that Tolkien had ever written, we could kind of see how all of this history related. And it just seems like, to me, he's finding a way to fit it together to tell a more expansive story.
Well, pardon my ignorance, is it like Apocrypha or like appendixes? Like, what are they? These are
he's got
stories that he wrote.
Some short stories. He has appendices. He's got books of history. Literally, it's like, and they're really tedious. I've tried reading a couple, and I'm just not the sort of person who can sit and read. I have a hard enough time reading history of the real world. Reading history of a fantasy world, I find just really mind-boggling.
What was the Silmarillion?
Silmarillion that's kind of the history. That's the history of the elves. And then there was a whole series of other histories. And then they just posthumously released one like 6-7 years ago. I can't remember what that one was called. But yeah, that was just tons of writings that he's done. And then his son kind of compiled a bunch of random writings, and it's kind of the letters of Tolkien or whatever. And just tons of stuff that he did, just kind of expanding this universe.
Wow. Huh.
So I think this one, it was a surprise to see these invented characters in this film, and I think maybe And I don't remember any sort of uproar about any new characters in the Lord of the Rings that happened to crop up here and there. But it was pretty true to the.
Are there more than one? Because from what I heard, I thought that Toriel was the only made up character. Is that wrong?
That's no. You're not. As far as I know, you're not. But it's a key.
Who is that?
It's a key. Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah,
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, got it.
And so
Don't be in proper
I
names.
know you sing song every time you have to butt in. That's awesome.
Sure. Talking dragon. Okay, go ahead.
she was the one that got a lot of the sort of, I don't know, dramatic controversy, if you will, that he's now making up characters for this beloved book. But this one, I don't know if it was in part because of the way she carries it, or because I deeply like Evangeline Lilly, and
Freckles.
yeah. Amen. And so she's. I thought this was great. But I really liked the sort of partnership between Toriel and Legolas. I think they were great on screen together, and their journey to follow the hobbits or to follow the dwarves was a highlight sequence for me.
And maybe that's what he's changing. Is it? I mean, yes, there's that additional character, but I mean, obviously, there's added scenes. Like I doubt that chase of them all the way to the lake town was in the book. I mean,
no,
I haven't read The Hobbit in like 20 years, but
The
was-
barrel chase?
Yeah, no, well,
Not the barrel
that's
chase.
how they escaped.
but the fact that
the
Toriel,
big-
the two elves chased the orcs all the way to Lake Town.
Yeah,
I don't think that happened. in the
No,
book.
and they didn't. There was none of that rescue. But the orcs didn't end up in Lake Town until the final battle, right? I mean, I didn't read the book again preparing for this. Thing, but...
I was glancing through the Wikipedia plot, and it's actually the goblins in the book.
Yeah.
From the time they get caught in the goblin caves in the Misty Mountains. The goblins are the ones who are pursuing them on the wargs. They're the ones who chase them to Beorn's house,
right?
And they're the ones who have an army at the end, and the dwarves, men, and elves all band together to fight the goblins and wargs in the Battle of the Five Armies. So I guess the orcs, that's a made-up thing. Is the fact that
Tom, you find something funny?
No, I'm sorry. I feel like if someone just stumbled into this, it's like describing like a fever dream, because I just don't know. It's just so many orcs and wargs and stuff. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I love that you guys are so smart about this, because if I was running this podcast, it would be a disaster. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, I think that's fair.
No, totally. No, and I'm not saying that you guys, I'm saying you guys should definitely lead this conversation much more than me. Yeah.
When we hit the, the goblins were sort of out. We don't know much for goblins right now.
Are they the ones that we spend a lot of time with in the caves in the first one?
Yes.
Yes.
And the
Got
Goblin King, they had the funny British accents that we were all making.
That was absurd. That was that was the Jar Jar of.
Right.
It was a little strange.
It was terrible. So that was terrible. But so maybe we'll see the goblins again in the final battle, or maybe they'll just be replaced by Italians or something. I don't know. You just do another swap out. So we get the I appreciate the new Toriel bit. I didn't find that offensive, and I think, again, back to Steve's point, I think for me that was that's part of the this particular cinematic universe, and I think maybe he gets away with more now than he did in the first film as a result of what Marvel has been doing, and is so I think it's almost as if it's now sort of part of entertainment culture that we can have completely separate sort of universes that we don't find offensive. It's not an adaptation. We're just it's based on this universe, and that's okay.
Do you guys, as lovers of the canon of the actual, not the canon, but just the Hobbit, are you okay with that? I obviously don't have a dog in the fight, but do you wish that it was just the Hobbit?
Well, I mean, it's different because the Hobbit. In this, you have to look at The Hobbit was written as this sort of standalone book, and then all of a sudden it sort of launched into this larger, Middle-earth universe that now, we have all this history. So much of that is only just slightly below the surface in The Hobbit. So I think what Peter Jackson's doing is, taking that story and putting it in its appropriate time and place in Middle Earth history. And I mean, that's really what, all the scene, this with the necromancer and Gandalf, and and I loved that, him seeing the eye and that, that iris of the eye and that shape and what that turns into. I just thought, okay, we're really, connecting everything together in a way that, in the Hobbit, in the book, it's just, Bilbo finds a ring, and it's only later on that we, learned, through reading Lord of the Rings, oh, by the way, there's this whole history. At the time, it's my understanding, in the Hobbit, it was just a magical ring, not the One Ring. And so it's sort of retrofitting that story into the larger history, and I think that's what the films do. So you have that whole complete picture. Because I think if you just tackled The Hobbit as a book, it would just feel really simple and almost shallow in comparison to the scope of the Lord of the Rings films. And I think this was the only way that Peter Jackson could really tackle it and do it justice.
Oh, it's because he started with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, because he started with just this huge, world that he'd created and so much history. And to go back to The Hobbit of just, oh, it's Bilbo going on a quirky, fun adventure with some dwarves. And, as I recall, there's some playfulness in just the writing of The Hobbit that I think would have not done the film justice compared to it. So I think I don't have an issue with it. It's just, like I said, I think it's what he's really doing is something on a different scale and scope in his adaptation of that, and bringing all those other characters and stories into the film. So it's, like I said, it's something I'm still stewing about of thinking, how do I cope with some things that bothered me or troubled me, and again, some of these invented things where it's, and I hate to make the comparison, but it's reminding me sort of Star Wars.
Are you going to say Alice in Wonderland? Oh, shit.
No, Star Wars, where we had 3 films, then we're going to go back, and now later on we're going to go and do the 3 precursors to that, and so we're going to put in little gimmicks and jokes. So where Legolas is looking at, one of the dwarves thing, he's like, oh, who's that? That's really, that's my fault. That's my son Gimli. And it's like, oh, haha, we all know that Legolas is going to meet Gimli in, Lord of the Rings. And it's sort of like the introducing R2-D2 in, Phantom Menace. It's what purpose does it serve other than as a little wink to the audience?
Well,
and those little things, they sort of bother me, because it's just this, sort of, Peter Jackson, hey, look at this. Look what I can put in here. Aren't I clever? And it didn't serve anything. And it just stood out and bothered me, because I thought, if you're going to add something, broaden that, not something jokey like that.
In a way that maybe I think is a little bit different than what you said, but is slightly along the same way. Why I said Alice in Wonderland is because Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland made me uncomfortable when I saw it, because I felt like there was a generation of kids thinking that Alice in Wonderland had a crazy dragon monster in it.
Yeah.
Would think that was the story, because he took a bunch of stuff from like Jabberwocky and Through the Looking Glass and called it Alice in Wonderland.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe it bothers me more for that, because I hold something like Alice in Wonderland more in esteem than the Tolkien stuff, just because I haven't read it. But it just there is something that doesn't sit great for me that way, especially when you're taking something on so iconic.
Yes.
I find myself, I'm sort of reflecting on that, Steve. The sort of Peter Jackson jokey stuff that you say. Like, for example, who's that? That's my son. I didn't sort of respond that way, only because in this case, and in contrast to George Lucas, in this case, there is a connection, because this was, he wasn't just making up the fact that this was his son. Like, there is a connection to the fact that, it's Gimli, son of Glóin, who is now here. Like, there is that sort of genetic connection that was in the book. That's not a made up thing. And I sort of felt that felt appropriate.
But Legolas's presence there is made up.
Yes.
And it's like, so that to me is the gimmicky part. It's because
that's a good point. That's a good point.
But Legolas is really the son of Thranduil, right?
I believe so, because I think if he made that up, then there would be
more people would be upset about that.
Up in arms. So, but it's again, and so the dwarves, in the novel The Hobbit, they are captured by the elves, and the Elven King is there, and it's not. But I think again, it's because this is a choice Jackson's making. In The Hobbit, he hadn't. When that novel was written, that character of Legolas had not been created. Jackson's now, possibly saying, well, if I look at, the timeline and how long elves live, then it's highly likely that they would have encountered Legolas there because he would have been alive at that time. So I can reasonably include him here. Okay. Right. And I can buy that. But again, it was just like, it was a quick little joke. And it's a tiny thing, and it's not something that ruins the movie for me.
It's nowhere near as bad as Anakin inventing C-3PO.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. That's exactly it.
No, it's not that bad. But
few things are that bad.
No, it is. But I think that's sort of the struggle that Peter Jackson has with this is he's got to put it in the context of the films that have been successful, and that's the other thing that I felt. Looking at these two films, it feels, I don't know, there's something about it that just feels like, I don't want to say he's because I know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into this film, but I feel like when tackling Lord of the Rings, there was this passion of like, this is his one chance to do it, and it was all or nothing, and there were such high stakes, whereas now it's like, well, I can do The Hobbit how I want. And I just feel like he's not that hungry filmmaker, because it felt like, and maybe because it is such a large bloated story, it's like I'm going through the motions, and I have got the collateral to I can do this project the way I want to do it, and he's not having to compromise on things and make sacrifices or choices and stick to the story. It's like, well, I can include this scene because I've got the money, I've got this, and he can just, it feels bloated to me in a way that Lord of the Rings doesn't, which feels really tight and has that strength and intensity. And this, it just, as I said, it feels like a mini series where there's scenes where it's like, okay, well, we need to get through this. But as a film, watching that, I'm like, what's drawing me through this scene? Well, it's just exposition. I need this information for later on, but there's nothing driving the scene, as opposed to Lord of the Rings, where there's always, to me, that pace. Those films are really long, and I always felt the writing was drawing me through those scenes and carrying me along. Whereas here, it's, Stephen Fry's character, stuff with him, I was bored to death.
Who is that?
He's the
town master.
The town master.
Oh, Stephen Fry, right. Sorry.
Yeah, all that stuff, I thought, what? And his little henchman guy just felt like, what are they adding? It didn't do anything for me.
I would echo that in particular. Some of that, and I don't know exactly where that fell apart for me, but it seemed like a forced reminiscence of Wormtongue.
Yes, exactly.
Right, and like in this case, we've been here. We know that worked, and actually there was, I think, a stronger actor in the role the first time we saw him, and so that worked. And that was the first sequence where, man, this part feels formulaic to me. Like this is something that he's sort of rubber stamped. Through the process, I felt, if anything was frustrating for me, it gets to the cliffhanger aspect of it. There was a lot of kind of Lake Town stuff and splitting up of the party and the poison.
So much splitting up of the party.
Yeah, there was a lot of the splitting up of the party, and that's where it started to feel a little bit heavy to me. But only in the sense that when it ended, I felt like there was an opportunity cost there, right? While I was watching it, I was okay with it. We were excited about it, but at the end, we felt that's where we walked out feeling like, gosh, if the trade-off was we get to see the climax of the dragon part, then we really would have traded that because this didn't feel like a complete
run around for a plant.
Yeah, this didn't feel like a complete story to me. It felt like it didn't feel like a complete middle chapter. It felt like it really did. I mean, I used the word sort of betrayal earlier on, and that I kind of mean it that way. Like it felt unfinished in a way that wasn't satisfying.
But didn't the middle Lord of the Rings feel that way? I'm trying to remember. I thought I remembered the middle of the Lord of the Rings trilogy feeling like, okay, we're just stopping now.
I'm trying to remember where did Lord of the Rings end?
Where did the Two Towers end?
Yeah.
No,
it was on no, it was that it was the two
Sam
Frodo,
and Frodo.
Sam
They're
and Frodo
walking
are walking on, and they everything
like
is suddenly gray, and they're standing up looking over the
and Gollum is plotting against them.
Right.
Does that not kind of seem the same way, or
that seemed like a much more sort of that was a satisfying cliffhanger.
I see.
But see, I thought this was as satisfying as the cliffhanger in Chasing Fire, because I felt maybe because I know what's going to happen. I just it has me on the edge of my seat waiting for a whole year before I get to finish it. Chasing Fire, I mean, I felt like
Catching Fire.
Yeah,
you're talking
whatever.
the Hunger Games.
Yeah,
finding fire,
finding the flame,
making a fire,
Flint and tinder,
building.
So hungry too. Electric Boogaloo.
Don't touch the electric fence. Don't touch the force field.
Oh.
Go. What were you talking about? Who is it? Who is this?
But the whole idea of that one, it sets like the cliffhanger on that one. It drops you into like a whole other world that I was not expecting at all. And not having read the books, I was like, wow, I have no idea where this is going. This just opened up into a huge world that I wasn't really expecting.
Oh,
and so I felt
really?
like that was
of the Revolution.
Yeah, I had no idea. Well, I hadn't read the book, so I had no idea where the film was going to be ending. And the fact
that must have been very satisfying for you.
It was incredibly satifying.
That's
but
awesome.
it was like as much of a cliffhanger as this, because it's just like, what is going on now? Like the whole idea that not to we're here to spoil The Hobbit, and here I am spoiling Catching Fire, but really
tricked ya.
No, gotcha.
Nothing is safe.
Yes. But I had no idea that was how the thing was going to end, and it really threw me for a loop. So all of a sudden, I just like it ends, and again, I was sitting there like, I can't believe the film just ended here. I felt like you owe me another half hour or 45 minutes to give me more, because I just am hungry now, and that's where this one left me, and so I'm very excited. I felt like they left it off in the right place.
You keep talking. I have the book right here. You hear that? That's the book. I'm checking something out.
Of what? Catching Fire or The Hobbit?
No, of The Hobbit. I keep the Catching Fire right next to my copy of 50 Shades of Grey and Divergence. Go ahead, talk amongst yourselves. I'm sure.
Well, I'm going to agree with Andy. I mean, I really enjoy. I mean, the whole last, once the dragon wakes up, and that whole sequence, it goes and it's this adrenaline piece, and then it's that powerful end of the dragon takes off, and Bilbo's just like,
my God, what have we done?
Yes, it's just powerful. And Andy, I totally can see what you're saying with Catching Fire, where it's just this, you've had this, and it's leading you right into something, and it's gonna just let you ponder that for a year while I come back, and it was very, very satisfying. It was
that was one of the most invigorating endings, going back to Catching Fire, just because you had no idea, like it just changed direction on you right at the end.
Well, and if we're gonna sidetrack onto that, I'm gonna say, to me, Jennifer Lawrence's talent as an actress and what the range of emotion she's able to convey in those few seconds. That last shot was just amazing. Yeah. So, and I guess that's okay. Coming back to The Hobbit, I'm glad we end on Bilbo, because so much of the film, it's become, although it is called The Hobbit, it's really the story of the dwarves. And I know that's true to the novel. It's the dwarves sort of hijack Bilbo into being the burglar to help them out. But it's really become Thorin's story of everything, because we now see, I was really sort of disoriented at the beginning of the film, because it's like, well, wait a second. I was trying to remember where the first film ended, because all of a sudden he's walking into the prancing pony, Thorin's walking into the prancing pony, and then, there's basically, bounty hunters after him. And I thought, okay, this must be from before. And then we see that, and I thought, okay, what is that telling us? A year prior, somebody, Gandalf finds out, there's people that are coming after him. I thought, okay, I guess to justify why the orcs are going to be continually tracking them, and I thought that really drew the attention away from Bilbo, whereas in the first film, it was really about, Bilbo, the Hobbit, and being drawn out of his comfortable life. And now this second film, it really shifted away from Bilbo, and maybe that was one of the things that was a slight disappointment for me, because he seemed a much less active role in what was going on in the story. I mean, yes, he does. He's got a few. The sequence with the dragon. He does things, but I just don't. I'm trying to remember, how much screen time does Martin Freeman have in this film? It just doesn't seem like a lot.
Well, he's got all the Mirkwood stuff. I mean, all the stuff with the spider. True. He's got the. I mean, he's invisible in the Wood Elves place.
That's true. But
maybe
it's.
But I agree with Steve, though, because he has tons of time, but there's not a lot of forward writing suspense movement on his story. Yeah. It seems like whether Thorin...
you're right.
Is Thorin at risk of... I was a little unclear. Is he at risk of being a jerk and not sharing all the gold with everybody? That like he's going to go crazy or something?
Well, that was something that happened in the first one, is that they set this idea up that his grandfather, Thror, refused. They were trying to, make peace with the elves or share in all the wealth. And there was a misunderstanding between the two of them. He refused to share. The elves said he was just being a jerk or whatever. And so it created this rift, and his grandfather got addicted to he found that Arkenstone, that big glowing stone, and it just kind of turned him, and he became obsessed with gold, which is what drew the dragon in the first place and destroyed the land. And so now there's this darkness on his family, and people think that he's going to come and he is going to kind of follow the same path of his grandfather. And then I don't think his father, I don't know what happened to his father, but anyway, so that was, I think, this film became the journey of Thorin, as we're kind of getting a sense, is he going to get drawn down this same dark road?
That's so interesting that's the same as like The Ring.
You're right.
I'm probably saying the most unsmart. I like what I'm saying, unsmart.
You're
that I
so
use
ironic.
a word that isn't. But I mean, just that it seems like such a huge through line is power makes you nuts or riches make you nuts.
Well, that's which is that's the overarching sort of theme of the entire universe.
Right, the ring makes you
nuts. That's the ring. Yeah. That's technology. That's
Yeah. Okay.
I got totally sidetracked because I started reading the book while you guys were talking.
Are you chapter 12, Pete? Inside information.
I was sort of flipping right around that area.
Yeah, because that's where the chapter ends with Smaug leaving and basically saying, "I'm gonna fly off and they shall see me and remember who is the real king under the mountain." He rose in fire and went away south toward the running river. So, I mean, that's... And I looked at that, I was like, wow, we've got like 90 pages left, or no, 50 pages left in the book.
It's not a lot of book left.
So it's going to be it's going to be the battle,
See, this is my problem, Steve. This is how I did not remember the end of the book, and that's why I'm manufacturing my frustration here. Make no mistake. But what I remember after, and this was after our last conversation about it, was that there was this third act that was the War of the Five Armies, right?
Right,
yeah.
And we have Thorin
really in here that much,
right? And doesn't it was in Thorin? He sets himself up in the thing. They barricade themselves into the thing, right?
Oh,
there's that whole section, and that seemed to me like a lot of action after the dragon is desolated.
Right.
But I think my problem is that that the dragon there's an awful lot of overlap, I think, in that last sequence. But I'm not sure. My expectation going into this movie is that we were going to meet the dragon, we were going to kill the dragon, and then the next film was going to be the final thing. But that's that's
well, I was expecting that too, which I think is part of the reason why I was just so surprised that it ended where it did. But I think in looking back on the reason to split it into a trilogy, I mean, I do think once you decide to split it, it seems hard to do it into two, but doing it into three, where you kind of have three natural segments, I guess, it feels a little more logical to me. And the idea of this whole idea of a battle of five armies, the way that he's been adding all these additional tales from all these other appendices and whatever, in order to build up to this big battle, I think to me it makes more sense. And so,
Well,
and I'm curious to see what he does with it. I haven't seen it, so I can't say it's going to be great, but I like the idea at least.
I think that's a key point, and that came home to me in the sequence where Gandalf is captured by Necrosauron. During that big transformation, right? We have he gets put into this cage, and once again looks down out of his cage. Just he spends a lot of time trapped in high places, this Gandalf, right? and in this, last time he was trapped on the top of the tower, dark tower. This time he's trapped in a cage, hanging over the orcs, mining one another, and the wargs frolicking, and that suddenly, as they march down the hill from underneath Dol Guldur, that suddenly made sense to me. I mean, that literally, that was the moment I'm sitting in there thinking, this is, as Steve said, I get what Peter Jackson was doing. I didn't before, and now I do.
And for me, and I'm very honest when I say this, it's potentially not worth talking about on the podcast, but I just sort of wanted to say I didn't understand what was going on. I recognize the eye of Sauron. Okay, easy with the attitude.
Hey, yeah, be careful. You're the one who's making us sound dumb right now. So
no, but I don't.
You're the cool one showing up, pushing me into my locker again.
Hey, everybody! I was too busy with chicks and sports to figure out what kind of mountain was involved. No, but I don't. I mean, it probably isn't worth. Probably the podcast people that would listen to this episode wouldn't want to be caught up on air. But I just wanted to say, for me, I was like, oh, that's a man just became the eye from the other movies, and with the stuff of him being caught, I was just completely lost. And maybe that's just because I'm terrible at fantasy, because it's so proper noun based and everything, one has a name that sounds like each other. But those were one of the reasons that maybe when I talked about things being bloated, most of Gandalf's stuff, I didn't understand what was going on. I don't understand that prison that he went to, where all those things were broken out. I don't understand who is drawing all of these dark people, and maybe that's what you're saying about the armies of the five. Again, I don't think we have to talk about it now, but I just am saying...
But you could have used some sort of a crib sheet.
For me, absolutely. I just had no idea.
But you did see Lord of the Rings, right?
I did, but...
Okay, so and I think a lot of what they threw out, without having to state it explicitly, they say, oh, well, there were 9 of them. So again, it's those ring wraiths, those 9 kings that, so it's again, they're just dropping in these little things for people that may not have read all the tales and know all this, but it's like, okay, because I was confused. I'm like, okay, what broke out of these prisons? Who is this? When we see the first one, I think, okay, so this necromancer escaped. Okay, and then he's like, oh, but then they show all these other cells that have been broken. I thought, what the heck is that? Then they mentioned 9, and I thought, okay, Middle Earth mythology, 101 kicks in. Okay, what are there 9 of that we know from Lord of the Rings? Okay, so clearly somebody, they escaped or,
those are the 9 people that had the rings?
Yes, the ones that are on the
black ring wraiths and the black hoods.
Right, the ones that are on the horses in the Fellowship of the Ring chasing Bilbo, and then later on they're on the big dragon-esque things flying around during Two Towers. Yeah.
I'm the worst, because I thought the 9 were like that one scene in the Lord of the Rings when they're like, we split up the ring, a bunch of all these different people. The Fellowship. I thought the 9 was the Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
I see now where the trouble lies.
Yeah.
Okay. So was this based on a book? All right, cool.
Let's talk.
This is based on the Bible.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on the dragon, please.
Oh my God, so phenomenal! And I don't know much about much, and I'm going to stop being quiet.
So you better tell me this about that.
But is this potentially? Well, I just don't know if there's like that much of a precedent. But like, this seemed like the best, coolest movie dragon that I've ever seen in my entire life.
It was.
I think it was the coolest dragon you've ever seen in your entire life.
That I've ever seen? Because I've seen this and Rain of Fire. Good night, everyone. I thought all of the scenes with Smaug reminded me in the first one of the scenes with Gollum, where I was like, these are the scenes that make all of the stuff that I don't understand absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that was for me, certainly was the case. I felt like the thing I was most concerned about going into this film was this idea of scope or scale of the dragon. Is he going to feel big enough? Is it going to be, we've seen the teaser and that giant eye opens. Is it suddenly going to be thrown completely off and instead it's just like a caricature with a giant head on a kind of a weird little body? And, I was concerned about that because that's, that was the thing that I've been, thinking about for 30 years. And boy, I felt really rewarded by the work on this dragon. I thought it was fantastic.
Size is such a cool thing to bring up.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I thought it did immensely well.
Why are Andy and Steve so quiet? I feel like they didn't like the dragon, and now I'm going to get sad.
No. I already said I loved it.
Oh, good.
No, I think, as, the Hobbit being that book that, really created the genre of, fantasy, type literature and the dragon there being an iconic, character, you have to do it justice. And I think there's no doubt that they succeeded, remarkably well in creating a dragon, not only in the size, but just the look and feel of that dragon is just, they captured that. That's, when you think of dragon, this is, I think, the standard that everything will be held to, because it was, it's an amazing sequence, just the movement of the dragon, the scales, everything, it blew me away. I loved that whole section. Once we got there, that movie had me. I just revert. My brain shut off. I turned 12 years old again. I was just in love with everything going on there, because that's what this movie, that's what I was expecting. So much of that, just fun adventure, so many cool moments, because that just the complex depths of, almost like Rube Goldberg device to, get the flames going, to get this going, to get that going, to, what are they doing? They've got this plan. And I love that of the dwarves knew what they were doing. We're just kind of like, okay, how is this? What is their plan? They've clearly got something going on. Just watching the pieces of that puzzle come together. And then it's this huge, statue. And I thought, okay, what are they, what's really going on there? And I thought, okay, well, it was just, the dragon, just, greed, golden, just being sort of in awe itself at this huge, I thought there was a range of emotions that Smaug is going through. I thought, is he insulted because now there's this, this golden dwarf that's, now claiming, his space. Oh my gosh. It just, I'm now babbling incoherently,
well,
like
a
12-year-old.
I think you hit it, and for me, it was this the transformation, because most of the film and of the first film, in fact, we have this setup where the dwarves come in and they're kind of developing this sophisticated plan, and it's supposed to be so great. But really, most of the first film and the second are about the dwarves bumbling their way through across the countryside, right? They're either soaking wet, or they're in barrels, or they're wrapped up as in spider webs. Like, they're not great travelers.
Oh, but barrel armor, come on, arms out the side.
Okay, that was all right. But what I loved so much was that transformation when you get these bumbling dwarves into the mines, that sort of experience of just how capable they are on the home turf. And I loved that. I thought that was great. I loved seeing those characters kind of own the mine.
Yes. And something that was so strong about that I do remember from the book is that the book, Bilbo goes in, has his confrontation with the dragon, and then he basically steals something and runs out with it. And to show them, I was there, the dragon's there. And that's just enough. Like, the dragon notices something is missing, and he just gets so mad, and he thinks that the Lake Town people are to blame, so he goes off to destroy the town. And, it kind of worked in context of the book, but I think this felt so much stronger to me, because it's like, now we're really getting that confrontation between the dwarves and the dragon, and there's much more going on there. It's a much more complex reason for that battle to be happening, and I felt it was much stronger in the film, and I absolutely loved it.
I think I would say that it was different for me, but you got to remember so much about that sequence of the book was about the relationship between Bilbo and the dragon, and about
which was
Bilbo's,
still
there. It was there, but certainly not as significant as the book. Bilbo goes back a number of times, I think, in the book. He goes back down again.
Does he really?
I think he goes down twice, but the conversation was much more, I think, intimate between these two. And in this case, we have this relationship. The film itself, as you guys have already said, really the focus is much more on Thorin, and it was. I think they balanced it really nicely by what they did. It was just different. It was, I didn't necessarily feel like it was stronger. I felt like it was much more intimate in the book than it was in the film.
I guess what I meant, it was just the reason for the dragon to leave is what felt stronger in the movie. Like I don't know. He got so much more worked up, and just stealing a cup.
He did get worked up. That's the.
It's truth. Like that was the whole reason to leave, is because Bilbo stole a cup.
Instead, it's going to be a 7-story giant gold statue. It's going to melt all up in your action.
That's right.
I will say that I think that fire must have been hot, because I think it takes kind of a long time to melt that much gold.
No, because the dwarf that looked like Harry Knowles was on the bellows.
Well played. Let's talk about the technology. Who saw it in 48 frames?
No. Is that the high frame rate? No.
I think Steve's the only one.
Yes, I'm the only one. It was just as gorgeous as the first one. I mean, it's 3D.
It doesn't look fake to you.
Well,
here's the thing. It looks like, to me, it's
an
like
old British sitcom.
No. Okay. And maybe I have to admit, I don't have a Blu-ray player, so I'm not. I skipped that generation, went from DVD straight to streaming. But when I'm in Costco and I'll see like Blu-ray of like Pixar films, it looks super vivid, super clear. That's what this looks like to me. It's just really real. Yeah, there's a slight video-esque quality to it. There's the slight, but it's not something that interferes with my enjoyment of the film. To have a very clear picture, to have just that, the only thing that bothered me with the 3D was the bees.
Boy, they were right up in there.
Yeah, it was just. I think there were a couple little. We're gonna poke these spears at the camera thing in Lake Town.
I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
But other than that, no. It was immersive, and I had no issue with 3D or picture quality. So
how is the 3D in the battle between the Necromancer and Gandalf? Because that was the one scene when I was watching it in 2D. I'm like, oh, I bet this is the scene that looks really great with all the black smoke and everything. It just, it wasn't that great.
It was, yeah. No, everything looked, yeah. It wasn't like wow, really added extra depth to it. It just, because everything is so, it didn't do anything above and beyond in that scene. It was still that you have that depth to it, but nothing that was like super memorable or blew me away about that scene. So
yeah, that didn't take advantage of it as much as maybe you would have thought.
No, it didn't.
I think apart from the bees and some of the, the Necromancer scene, I saw it in just regular 3D, and I did,
Me too.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was very cool. I thought it was cool, like the Harry Voldemort finale.
Yes.
It had that same sort of feeling, like it was artful but not overplayed.
Right.
Whereas the bees and the spears flying at you, that's overplayed. That's no longer artful. I think I still go back to, and I'm really hate to do this, but I still go back to Avatar as a display of really admirable 3D restraint. Right, using the 3D for the sake of the composition and not for the sake of the technology, and it's pretty rare to see I think yet films that really do it well every time, and in this case it was pretty darn close. I thought it was nicely done.
Yes.
But I'm going to see it again at the same theater. It's my only shot here, and so last time around I thought it was I thought that high frame rate, it made me dizzy, and you couldn't turn your head off of about 3 degrees off of level, or else everything would fly out of whack and you'd have a seizure. And so I'm going to try it again. In the reviews I've read so far, many are saying that in fact this is whatever they did different in this 48 frames per second IMAX than they did last time. That they have made some technical improvements over the last film, and that it's actually more better.
Yeah, I've heard they worked on some things. I guess adding some extra motion blur to things so that some of the movement, so it's sort of, I guess, it's okay. We're going to shoot at this rate, and that's going to remove motion blur. But our eye is so used to that, we need to add that back in so that it looks more
right. And if you remember,
natural,
the first time around, we talked about that they added motion blur as kind of a hack because it tested so poorly. And this time, I think they going in thinking about those compensations, I think probably made a better experience. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I think I'm going to catch it again this week. And
so they're making the 48 frames look more like 24 frames.
Yes.
But because
what's the point?
I don't
get it.
You go see it a second time. You have to tell
Let's do 48, but let's cut them each in half.
Yeah. So, Pete, you have to keep an eye out for Stephen Colbert. He is one of the Lake Towns.
Yeah, I read that, but I missed it.
I didn't.
But I thought that it was maybe just someone that looked like him. But I thought it was Stephen Colbert because what's his name? Peter Jackson shows up in the very beginning. And then
he's in that first shot, right?
Right. Yeah. So where was Stephen Colbert? Because I missed it. It was only afterwards I went, oh, that's right. I was supposed to.
He was in Lake Town, and he had an eye patch or something that he.
Oh, the eye patch.
Oh, that was him.
Oh, the eye patch guy totally got that.
Okay. That's if that was Stephen Colbert, then that's Stephen Colbert.
Or else all four of us sound really dumb.
Yes. Yeah. Stephen.
Okay. All right.
Now,
did any of you? This is not trivia, but did any of you expect to see Oz the Great and Powerful jumping around with the piles of gold when they went into the cave? Speaking of the last movie we saw with great big piles of gold.
I didn't. I did expect a leprechaun at some point.
I just had a little chuckle to myself when I saw the gold because I'm like, oh, it made me think of that horrible movie, which was sad.
I loved how one of the effects I kept trying to figure out what's the point there. Anytime Smaug would breathe fire, all the gold would get hot.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool. It didn't even occur to me that was something that they were gonna that they would have thought of. But I loved it, and it was actually a great setup for the dragonfire starting the bellows again. I thought that was just really, really beautifully done.
I'm happy to go on back and say that whenever his stomach or throat would start lighting up, I just thought that was cool. I was like, how has no one, or maybe they have, but I think, how has no one ever thought of that before?
Yeah.
Cool.
It was awesome. As somebody who played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, that was the epitome of what I always pictured as a dragon in my head. It was so perfect in every way. Just so much fun watching Smaug.
I was too busy working on my truck. Can we
Flirting
talk
with
about
all those girls and pushing us in lockers?
Totally, exactly, yeah. Can we talk about spiders for a second?
Oh, yeah. Please!
Spiders are the worst. Oh my god, it was breathtaking, and that whole him getting his breath of air. Well, I liked actually a lot of the quote unquote psychedelic things that they were going through in the Forest of Nightmares. I don't know what that forest is.
Oh, when he was walking in line with himself.
Yeah.
Walking along with himself, and they're all super lost, and then he goes on top, and that was the most beautiful shot, I think, of the film, and such a great cutaway to then seeing what seems like a dinosaur walking through the forest, and then it turns out to be the spiders. That was terrifying. I was kind of under my seat during a lot of that.
It was beautiful, and that was, I mentioned this one of the sequences that I felt like was too short. I could have used even more of the spider stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought it was really dramatic, and he moves almost too quickly to defeat the first spider and start cutting down everybody. But I loved the sort of reckless abandon about which he goes in slicing them down, and as each body tumbles through the layers of web
netting,
below. I thought
web.
that was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And the herd of spiders that comes down on them was just fantastic.
I wanted to crawl out of
forgotten-
my skin.
In the book, when he put the ring on in the book, could he understand the spiders speaking? Because I thought that was so
neat.
cool, and I didn't remember that in the book, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so creepy, but I loved it.
Yeah, I didn't remember that from the book either. I felt like that was about as close as we'd gotten to that was just understanding the black speech or hearing the black speech in Lord of the Rings.
That
was a great throwback.
I had to go back and look at that section, Andy, because my youngest daughter actually went and saw it Friday night. She was at a friend's birthday party. They went, and so she came back and she said, yeah, the movie had a huge mistake in it. And I said, well, I think people would have noticed. She said, well, he puts on the ring and then he can understand the spiders. But then later on in the movie, he doesn't have the ring on and he can understand the dragon. So then I had to, geek out and explain, okay, no, dragons are super intelligent beings and they can speak English. And so that's how they can have that conversation. It's not that he's supposed to have been wearing the ring to understand. So I went back to look, and there is a piece where he is he can't understand the spiders talking is in there.
Very cool.
But for me, the really powerful moment of that was when he's dropped the ring and he goes to get it and he has the kills the. Is it a spider or a giant?
I don't know. I couldn't figure out if it was a baby spider or a giant.
Oh yeah, what was that?
But it was some type of insect. But when he just goes to town and just hacks that thing, and then he has that moment of realization of,
what have I done?
Who am I? And it just you can see it was to me that was that nice. You start to see the ring and that hold it's going to have on Bilbo. That we then see later on, in Fellowship of the Ring, when they're in Rivendell and he freaks out on Frodo. It's just, that evil darkness of just protectiveness over his ring and what it drives him to do, which is so out of character for a Hobbit. And that moment when he realizes that, I thought that was, a very nice moment. That, well played for that to really show that Bilbo's aware of there's something funky going on here. Who am I? And it was really nicely done.
Doesn't he say? He says mine, right? Like
Yes.
almost impetuously, like mine.
Yeah.
That's
Yep,
what I think.
Mine. Yep.
Whether it was or not,
Yeah.
my mind made it into a baby creature
Oh.
or baby spider because that would give him reason to feel that kind of, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a giant grub.
Although I would kill a giant insect crawling toward me too.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Oh
Yeah, I wouldn't need the ring.
yeah, it's like no thanks.
Let's before we get too long in the tooth, gentlemen, let's talk about some standout performances. Anybody in particular you would like to give a shout out to?
Gandalf was fun. Sorry.
Yeah, I just thought they did a good job of really building the dwarves more. I mean, not all of them. With I don't remember 13 dwarves, however many there are.
Yeah.
It's hard to give all of them a lot of time, but I really liked the older one, the big white beard. I liked the kind of the
wise
relationship.
one.
It was
Balin, the relationship
Ken
between
Scott.
him and Thorin. I really liked that relationship quite a bit. I mean, I think the dwarves, I really just love that cast of characters. My daughter came with me. The big fat one is her absolute favorite, and she burst out laughing when he does his little barrel fight and then dives off the cliff and like skinnies up to land perfectly in the barrel. She just thought that was one of the funniest things she had seen. And so, I mean, it's definitely great for comic relief, but it's a good group. I enjoy kind of the craziness of this group. And I gotta say, for the characters, I had a bit of an issue last time with the white orc, Azog the Defiler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always felt he looked so CG. This time, I felt they really got it right, and I just thought he looked solid all the way through, and I really liked him and all of the other ones, like Bolg, the big tall one that he sets up. Yeah, his son.
That's his son?
Yeah.
according
Right,
to Wikipedia, it is. Yeah.
Right, and
Cool.
that I had just read. Interestingly enough, they had actually when they I don't know if you guys seen this, they had shot those scenes. They had actually done practical effects on an actor for that role, and then decided to replace it with a CG character.
Huh. Really?
On
Azog
Azog?
No, not Azog. His son, the one that he,
Bolg.
yeah, Bolg or whatever, was actually an actual actor done up, and then they went back in and replaced it with a CG. Now, I'm assuming they kept the voice performance, but they actually replaced the physical presence with a CG character. And I don't know if it was the difficulty of matching up, physical presence and a CG.
Azog along that. That would look terrible.
Right.
He was, he's been in a lot of the Lord of the Rings films. This
talking about
was Lawrence, Bolg, Lawrence Makawar.
Makawari,
Makawari, Maori actor. He's been in. He's played an orc, I think, in just about every.
Yeah.
He was the head. He was the head of the Uruk-hai.
Yeah, the head of the Uruk-hai. In
Right. And if you do a little Google search and look, you can see, and that's what that's the original design of the character. Looked a lot more in line with like the Uruk-hai and that type. Not at all like what they have on the CG character, which fits more in with Azog, who's the physical scarring on his body, and then just sort of the mutilation, the battle scarring that they have, just creates a different sense for those characters. And I think I appreciate what they did with that, and I think it works well as opposed to having a more Uruk-hai type orc as the son and all that. It just created a very identifiable character.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was Mr. Kill in Die Another Day.
Good to know. I was about to ask.
Okay.
Right?
In addition to what Steve said, and then
Shut up,
going
Tom.
on off of what nerds, going off of what Andy said, is I guess we did finally learn why, to steal from my own dumb joke from the first one, why there was a Steve. Not Steve Sarmento, but why there was like bloaty big nose and horrible wart eyes, and then Jeff is because he turned out to be kind of a romantic potential foil, I guess, for Legolas or whatever.
Well, and
that makes sense.
Still, I was waiting for more. For some reason, I thought, okay, because he talked about his mother, and I thought, is one of his parents not a dwarf? Is there something else going on? Because he doesn't, and that was one of the things that I guess. To nitpick little things on the dwarves, the makeup on the face creates very distinctive, memorable characters, so that we know, okay, there's this one and this one. But the hands, why do they have to give them like the prosthetic stubby finger hands that just when they're trying to get the key in, it looked too. That was really
notable.
Yeah. Whereas, with, Steve Jeff, the, very human looking, dwarf, he doesn't have any of that. He just looks like the average. It's like one of his parents was human or a grandparent was human. I thought something was going to come into that, which would establish a connection, why he doesn't. And maybe that's, why Toriel has this, because he's not so dwarfish. Like all the others, there's something unique. Which
who are you talking about? You're talking about Keeley, right?
Yeah. With poison
the one
arrow
who has no prosthetics on his face.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Okay,
that's why we call him Steve.
We call him Steve Jeff. I get it. I don't know why. I must have forgotten that joke.
Because he's not bulbous wart nose.
Yeah, he's not bulbous wart nose.
Oh, I just brought in Jeff just now.
Well, that's new. Okay. That's a bit. Okay.
He was
the third one. It'll be Steve Jeff Kevin when we do. So.
Excellent. All right. So let's do. What else do we have? Anything else to add before we get to ranking this thing?
I would like to say one last thing. Oops.
Okay. So Tom has one. Andy has how many?
No, I'm good.
Steve.
Yeah, I just want to say the closing song over the credits. Just an amazing song, just really fit, and I just think really fits the tone of the film, and just it was something where it ends. I'm in awe. I'm just wow, and then that song kicks in. I See Fire, amazing track. Been listening to it all weekend.
It is. Say who is. I can't find it fast enough. I immediately went out when you posted it. I immediately went over to iTunes and bought it. It's fantastic.
It's Ed Sheeran. Yeah,
right.
Amazing performer, and that's just a nice closer to the film. Just really.
Oh,
set
it's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, and Tom?
Oh, well, now I feel bad because he closed it out with the end of the film. But I was just going to say that the barrel chase, the barrel chase was I know that we've touched on it a bit, but that was such a stand-apart sequence of the film that me and everyone in the theater and I were like giggling and clapping along during it. We couldn't get enough of it. It was so much fun.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm interested in what you guys think of that sequence, because that's the sequence that is most... And I should preface this. I agree with you. I really enjoyed that sequence. It was just the right sort of kind of frivolous action that I wanted. But it was the sequence that most screamed to me, okay, this is the anchor for a video game. Spin-off, right? Like, this is what they're going to do. But I also think when we last talked about this thing, we posted, I think, a YouTube video of Legolas and Toriel and somebody else watching an audience, like a sample audience, watching that, what I have to now assume is that sequence, and the audience like coming out of their skin with excitement. And I felt like that. Like, I watched that sequence and he's standing on their heads, and I was just, I was so excited by that sequence. I was having a blast. What did you guys think? Good?
I loved it. And then I found out that when Peter Jackson had originally set this up as 2 films, the first film ended with the silhouette of Bard the boatman stepping up with his bow as they come in the barrels and everything, and then when he shows up, that's where part 1 was going to end, when it was originally conceived as 2 films. So you would have had the big barrel escape as your big action
scene 1 or movie 1 climax.
Movie 1 climax, which but whereas now it's sort of in the middle of 2, and I think it. Tom, I agree. Everybody was giggling and giddy all throughout that scene. I don't know how you can't be. It's just so much fun.
And going back to the point of the book as a kind of a children's book, as Tolkien wrote it, I think they brought a lot of that, especially in a world that has a lot of darkness going on in it.
Yeah.
They brought a lot of that fun back in. And I mean, my daughter had so much fun watching that, like, jumping on the heads and, all of that. It was just an absolute blast watching that whole chase. And that was something that I was like, I would love that to have keep going, because it was so much fun to watch.
That's what was missing for me so much in the first one. It had the frenetic pace of the first one, but not the imagination of always keeping you guessing where are they going to go next, versus just action pretending to be innovation, movement pretending to be innovation.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last thing, or do we want to wrap up?
No, do it.
I never usually have to go to the restroom during movies. But I had a large icy during this one, and I did. And we can discuss this off or on, but I left when they were with Bard. That's the boat guy from Lake Town.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They were like, we want to take a ride on your boat. He's like, it's going to cost some money. And I was like, this is a bunch of nonsense. So I went outside and went to the restroom for what seemed in my mind, because I was so panicked about getting back, for like 15 minutes. And I walked back into the theater and they said, okay, let's go. And they all got on the boat. What? I assumed we cut away to something else that Gandalf was doing, but like, what? Did I miss literally nothing? They were just bartering in real time. Again, this gets to my feeling of bloat, but like, I thought I was gone for 15 minutes, and they're like, okay, just don't cover us with fish. And I was like, what? I missed nothing? That's insane.
See, now that you're saying it, I have no memory of what you would have missed there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm going to specifically watch this when I see it again this week, and I'm going to post.
Okay, cool. Thank you, guys.
That's horrible. All right, now we need to do our regular stack ranking, people. We've got, if you head over to flickchart.com, you can...
Flick chart, getting it on, get your flick chart on. Right? Aren't I in charge? I thought
you are. You are. I failed. That was me. I should have set you up better.
Okay, cool.
Now, I almost want to do it again. I'm going to restrain, but almost I want to do it again.
Let's do it again. Flick chart, everybody go and get your flick chart on. So worth it.
That is actually perfect. I'll be able to do a good cut in when I edit that. That'll be great.
Okay.
So you head over to Flickchart, people, and you can like us over there, friend us, whatever you need to do to us over there, and you can catch up with our stack rankings of all of the films that we have reviewed over the last however long we've been doing this. If you start from our website, there's a big button right there on the sidebar. It says you can click on the golden ticket list right there, and that's our top 100 films at Flickchart, and we will see if The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, will make it into the top 100.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, here we go. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, or The Inside Man.
What's the?
Oh, The Inside Man.
Are we saying Inside
Really?
Man, the Spike Lee movie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Inside Man, the Spike Lee movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll do Hobbit because, I mean, come on. Just for the scope, for the sheer scope of it, I'm doing Hobbit. And the dragon.
Wait, so in The Hobbit, was there a guy who plastered himself behind a wall of a bank vault?
Yes.
Good question, Pete.
It was
there
big
was.
dragon. It was a big dragon. He plastered himself inside a bank vault.
Oh, that's true.
Well, okay, Andy, I'll bring up the point of when Pete asked us about really, performances, there wasn't really any strong standout performances. And I think, yes, I know you guys will always be bothered by Jodie Foster, Inside Man, but I think Clive Owen and Denzel Washington, their performances, above. To me, Desolation of Smaug, the performances were just very...
This is not a movie I'm going to go to for performances. It's a movie I'm going to go to because I want to get my dragon on.
Yeah, I know, and that's fine, but there's too much other bloat in there, and
Yeah, I'm going to go with The Hobbit on this one. I'm kind of surprised, but I really, really don't like Jodie Foster in that movie. I mean, I don't think it's possible to overstate that.
I'm going with Steve. Inside Man, please.
Oh, God, man.
But I'm also waiting for Steve to invite me over for dinner. Am I right, folks? All right.
All right, what do? We only have 2 and 2. Last time was the first time Andy and I have had to resort to playing rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, 2 and 2? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I totally messed up. Somebody's got to give. Who's it gonna
really?
be? Yeah.
Well, Mike, if he were here,
Oh, good. Yes. What do we know about Mike?
Did
I
he
don't know.
send anything?
But
No.
he didn't send anything. I doubt he's even seen it because they're trapped at Disney World. So, but I bet he'd pick The Hobbit.
I bet Chad would too.
Yep. All right.
This seems like an Inside Man.
Yes. So,
I think you guys just got had.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we just got-
fine.
You just
got
got
smogged.
smogged.
Yeah, we got smogged. All right.
The Hobbit or World War Z.
World War Z.
World War Z. It's got zombies. Pete knows everything's better with zombies.
I
Fargo
know.
would have been better if it had zombies, right?
You can't. I mean, really. All of that is true. I have to go World War Z.
Yeah.
All I could say is Smaug zombie. As long as he's going to
Yes.
be making changes to the film, had Smaug been a zombie, we would have.
Isn't Necromancer a zombie?
He's
we
some
didn't-
sort of a king wraith.
Yeah.
I don't know what he is.
All
He's-
right. Smaug or Fight Club?
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Yeah, I'll do Fight Club.
Yes.
All right. Smaug or Barton Fink?
Barton Fink.
I would do Smaug.
Oh,
I really like Barton Fink. I hadn't seen it in years, and I watched it. I really liked it, but again, I just,
dragon. Yeah,
Dragon.
dragon's gonna beat out. Head in a box.
Wow. So, Steve, you were with Smaug. Is that what I hear?
Yeah, I think so on that one. I do enjoy Barton Fink, but I think there's I'm gonna have to go with Smaug.
Well, and go
Oh
ahead.
my gosh, Barton Fink. So much more. You guys, Pete.
I know.
It's a good- no, it's-
believe me,
it's a
I'm the one who's
fantastic
been
film.
carrying a flag for Barton Fink. Like that's
Which is getting
And Pete-
really
and-
awkward, by the way.
still
Like
carry it.
your neighbors are getting really concerned.
Why does he have that flag?
I'll tell you, I deeply love Barton Fink. I'm going to go Smaug on this one, only to make
Scope?
it less awkward, and because the dragon's really big.
Fair enough.
Smaug
John-
or Taxi Driver? Pete's favorite
Smaug.
movie.
Smog.
Smaug.
All right, Smaug it is.
Andy,
Smaug
wait a
or-
minute. Andy, no, come on. Legit, what would you have picked if you'd been doing
would
this
pick
alone?
Smaug. I would
Oh,
pick
really?
Smaug.
Oh, okay.
Come on,
Wow.
it's a
Good.
freaking dragon, you guys. This is like, for me. I'm sorry, I've lost in my high school Dungeons and Dragons head right now. So
Didn't he ask at one point if Martin Freeman was talking to him? All right. Taxi driver jokes. That's why you guys have me on, right? All right.
that's good.
Was it?
That wasn't good. No,
Nope.
Smaug or Up in the Air.
Up in the air.
Oh, really?
You know me. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
the
know. I
fantasy
don't
guy.
know why that should be surprising.
And Up in the Air was my favorite movie of that year.
That was such
It's
a good film.
It's a great movie.
It's a good film.
I think it's a perfect script. I'm still going with the dragon. Sorry, I feel so guilty, but I'm doing it.
It keeps coming back to which would I, if I had them both sitting next to me, which would I put on first? So far, I'm answering pretty true to that. And I'm going to say it again. Smaug.
Which would you put on first, but which would you want to like fast forward through 45 minutes of at different points?
There's nothing.
I'm
enough
giving
to fast
I'm
forward.
giving the Avatar argument. Like Avatar, oh my god, so much fun when you first saw it. Then
Yeah.
it comes on HBO and you're like, oh right.
Right. This is HBO. I can't fast forward.
This takes a while.
Yeah. No,
All right.
I agree with you, but that's not. I don't feel that way yet. Let's. We'll do it again in a year.
Yeah, things could always change.
All right. Next.
Steve. Well, what did Steve say?
I'm,
Steve sounds like he's dying.
Yeah, I am. Because if
I smell toast.
if I say which one, if I'm flipping channels and one of them is going to be on, I'd probably go with Smog. Yeah.
This is why Flickchart is one of the most frustrating things in the world, but it is good. All right, Desolation of Smaug or The Asphalt Jungle.
What's that?
Well, that'll make it easy.
Is that a
Yeah.
Sidney Poitier movie? I'm not joking.
No, that's
Is
the
that a
Blackboard
Sidney-
Jungle.
That's Black.
Oh,
Blackboard,
okay.
yeah.
So I'm not.
This is a noir.
yeah,
heist.
this
You guys
is,
thought I was
like-
being racist for a second, but I was actually on track. Okay,
This
cool.
is John Huston's noir film, crime story.
I guess I have to go with Smaug because
Smaug,
it's what
yeah.
I know of. Okay.
Yeah. it's
Yeah.
Smaug. All right, number 48, right below Fight Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really? But
Now,
I was severely out.
Where did the first Hobbit fall?
Let me look. We have
Where's
125 movies on Flickchart now. Let me pull up the list here.
302.
It is, let's see, Smaug is 48, and Unexpected Journey is 97.
Oh wow! Still
That,
not-
okay.
not-
See,
not bad.
relatively,
Okay.
that feels about right to me.
I agree.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go.
We did it!
We did
Yay!
it. Another one down. Well done, gentlemen. We
Excellent.
have next month. We haven't picked the film yet,
Nope.
but my goodness, we're hitting. This was the last.
be-
What?
Next month will be the Desolation of January.
Desolation of
Oh,
January.
that's true.
Right.
Oh,
We'll have to.
Yeah.
We'll have to search hard, high and low for something.
We will be scrambling just a bit, but I wonder if we look back at what we have done this year, any highlights from the year, from particularly from Steve and Tom, that you think God, this year for me will be known by. What would that be?
Wait, are you finishing that sentence or
No, that was it. This one known by ellipsis quote.
from movies that we've seen on the podcast?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, or it could be other films that you feel like we've just grossly missed.
Do you want to know what we talked about? Should I read through the films that we've talked about?
Oh,
this week?
to me, I think Pete's gonna love this. I think it was Your Next. That discussion was just so much fun.
Oh.
In terms of,
I hate all you guys.
that was because it was such an unexpected surprise, and I think the discussion I really enjoyed discussing that one. And I think Prisoners, which coming out on DVD this week, so check it out. And if you haven't listened to our review, go on, listen to that from September, and then buy the DVD or stream it online. But definitely check out The Prisoners.
Absolutely.
That's definitely one to see. What about you, Tommy?
I guess I would say, if we want to say unexpected surprises, but in a slightly different way, the bullet train sequence from the Wolverine is still one of the most fun times I've had in a movie theater for a movie I couldn't have cared less about. But I also really did like The Prisoners, and my two movies, potentially less unsung, whatever it is, more unsung movies would be The Way, Way Back and The Kings of Summer. I thought both had a lot of problems, but were both very, very delightful. I love both of those movies. Fair enough?
I absolutely agree with that, yeah.
Cool.
I think I'm looking back through our list of films. There's a lot of films we didn't like very much.
Oh,
I'm hard pressed to say whether I disliked Oz more or Now You See Me.
I was just going to make a Now You See Me joke, but it wasn't really coming.
It was a bumpy spring. It was a really bumpy spring. Yes.
Yeah, we had 42 was. I mean, 42 was all right.
March, April, and May was kind of abysmal.
Side effects had its issues.
I think for me, it really is between. While I would agree with Steve, I as much as I absolutely detested Your Next, I did like the conversation quite a bit. I thought that was much fun.
Agreed.
But the between Prisoners and Gravity, I think are two real standout films for me. And I think for me this year is probably going to be known as the year of Gravity, just in terms of what that film accomplished for me and the way I remember it, which surprised me.
All right, so what's going to win Best Picture? Is Gravity or 12 Years a Slave going to win Best Picture?
I'm actually going to say Gravity.
Wow. He's on the record.
Oh.
Well, because I guess after year 6, I was like, we get it, you're a slave.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I agree with you 100%. I came out of that film and I was like, okay. I saw Amistad. I've seen Roots. I didn't do anything other than be a little bit more brutal. And I thought, it didn't tell me anything I didn't know. I didn't do anything with the character that was, it just kind of, it was interesting, but I was not impressed. To me, it reminded me of Black Swan, because it's like, oh, here's a shot of the water and the churning of the riverboat, and we're going to linger on that because it's artsy, I guess, is what it was supposed to be. Or, I mean, there's one sequence in that movie that was one long continuous shot where he's got to whip the what's her name. That was a powerful moment. The rest of that movie, entirely forgettable to me. Do not see what all the fuss was about on that one, honestly.
Oh. Well, to potentially redeem myself and accidentally throw Steve under the bus.
No, go ahead.
No, I thought the film was pretty breathtaking when I saw it. The one problem, and it's going to sound like I'm being racist again for a joke in a second, but it's really not. The one problem I have with movies like that, or the same problem that occasionally I have with Holocaust films, is that it's not that anything is learned or there's an arc. It's just something to be endured. And while I understand that this is something that should not be forgotten in history, and I'm so glad to have seen these films, it's not like he became a better man or a stronger man. And again, I loved 12 Years of a Slave, but it's just something to be endured versus anyone really changing that much. And that's some of the time that I have the trouble with these kind of historical films.
Right. To me, it didn't add anything to the conversation about the subject, whereas there's
white people are terrible unless you're Brad Pitt,
who's a Canadian in the film. So people are bad unless they're Canadian. To me, it didn't add anything to the conversation of that topic. Whereas there's a World War II film coming out early next year that was supposed to be out at Christmas. And I think that's adding something new to that. Looking at what the approach they're taking, it's set in World War II, but to me that looks like an interesting take on. Okay, we've seen lots of war stories before. this has got a different approach to it. To me,
This is-
that's interesting because it's bringing a different story to it as opposed to 12 Years a Slave. I feel like I've seen the abused slave, and I mean, yes, I agree, Tom. It's important, but it didn't bring anything new to the table, and that's what I was expecting.
You are talking about the Monuments Men, right?
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that film the same way I was looking forward to Inglourious Bastards for exactly that reason. It is a new take on a genre film or a historical sort of fiction. In this case, I think Monuments Men, not historical fiction, but just because I think that this is a true story, right? If I'm not mistaken, I'm very much looking forward to that extra dimension that I think they're going to bring to this film. I hope it doesn't suck because it got kicked back into kind of a weird place.
But it's George Clooney. I mean, I believe him. I believe in him as a filmmaker, except for those who stare at goats, like more than anybody.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're categorically wrong. I love Stark.
I can say it doesn't suck. So.
Oh, someone's from the future. Does Obama win again?
How did you?
Great. Now they're coming after me. You're going to have to cut that out. Edit.
Excellent. Well, all right. So we don't know what's coming in 2014 in terms of our schedule, but we're going to get right on that, and we will. I think that's it. Make sure you head over to thenextreel.com. You subscribe to the show there. You can subscribe in iTunes. Make sure you get it. It's the best way you don't miss a single episode of just movie awesome into your canal every single week. And
don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes so that you can have a chance to be the person who gets to pick an episode for us next year.
That's right. And follow us on Instagram so that you can get a chance to win Andy Nelson's Guess the Movie Pony Prize. That's going to be so great.
But it's not my pony.
No,
I'm going to steal one.
Pony is a metaphor, people. Pony is a metaphor.
You don't want to know what it's a metaphor for.
That's right.
It's a very nice pony.
On behalf of Steve Sarmento, Tom Metz, Andy Nelson, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next time on The Next Reel.